Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Greg Easton. I am Head of Business Development at Tollring, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Steve Morrell, Managing Director of ContactBabel.
Hello.
And over the next 30 minutes, we'll be combining ContactBabel's independent research into UK insurance contact centers with Tollring's expertise in compliance recording and conversation analytics to explore what's really driving customer experience in the insurance sector. Our focus for the session is simple: moving from assumptions to evidence. We'll share some of the challenges that insurance companies are facing, what customers are telling us through their interactions, and how analytics can help us uncover insights that traditional reporting often misses. Drawing on independent industry research, customer insights, and practical examples from contact centers across the UK insurance sector, we'll look at how organizations can move beyond assumptions and anecdotal feedback, using conversational analytics and AI-driven insights to understand what customers are really saying and where opportunities exist to improve efficiency, retention, and service quality. And before I start into the meat of the slides, please be assured that we will be distributing a link to the recording and the slide deck to everyone who's registered after the session. So let me tell you a little bit about Tollring, because Tollring is a name in our industry that is probably not very well known. And the reason for that is our end customers typically buy our products through service providers. So service providers like BT and companies like that. But we have been in existence as a software vendor for more than 30 years, building products that are used and relied on day to day by around 28,000 business customers around the world. So you will find our products being used in around 20 countries globally. And to give you an idea of the scale of that, we monitor on a day-to-day basis over 8 million endpoints. And an endpoint is effectively a telephone extension. So the end of a telephone line where you have someone talking to someone else, that would be an endpoint that we monitor. And by monitoring, we are talking about call analytics and reporting, but also call recording and then conversational analytics. And over our 30 years of existence, we've built products that have been recognized within the industry as being leading products for our customers. And obviously, as you would expect, as a global provider of software solutions, we invest heavily in our security posture and our certification across ISO standards. So a brief intro to Tollring and who we are and what we do. And with that, let me hand you over to Steve Morrell. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Greg. I'm Steve Morrell, Managing Director of ContactBabel. I'm going to walk you through what our data is telling us about insurance customer experience in 2026. Quick word first on who we are and what we do. We're a research analyst house looking at contact centers and CX globally. Been looking at this for like 25 years now. So everything I show you today is built on primary research with surveys with hundreds of contact centers and thousands of customers. We publish over 50 free reports a year, so please go onto the website, have a look around, see if there's anything that particularly interests you. And this one we're drawing on today is the vertical view UK insurance contact centers, and that's available free of charge. And I believe you're going to be emailed this after the event. So let's get into what we found. Start with the shape of the industry. A couple of things here kind of tend to surprise people a bit. Now, the first is that despite everything you might hear about digital channels, chatbots, etc., taking, destroying the voice channel, 74% of interactions in the insurance sector are still voice-based. Telephone hasn't gone anywhere. And in this sector, it remains the main channel through which customers and insurers actually talk to each other. Second surprise is that insurance as a sector, compared to the contact center industry as a whole, is remarkably good at answering the phone. Average insurance contact center takes 30 seconds to pick up a call. What's that? Almost 4 times less than UK average, a little bit more than that. And that's actually really good. And that's certainly one of the best sectors that we cover, and that kind of feeds into the call abandonment rate there you see, which is also considerably lower than the UK average. And I think something about insurance calls that people, they don't just ring up because they feel like it, they ring because they have to, so the abandonment rate's got to be less there anyway. So, you know, pat on the back, well done. So traditional service measures like this shows an industry performing well above the norm, and that's excellent. And yet the calls themselves often are difficult. They tend to be high in complexity, possibly quite emotional, and certainly high in cost. So whether that's a claim, renewal, worried customer, you know, all of these things kind of increase call lengths and cost. So answering the phone quickly is important, but that's maybe one of the easier bits to it. It's what happens, excuse me, what happens once the conversation starts is where the real challenge sits. And that's really what the rest of this presentation is all about. So we can't have a presentation these days without talking about AI, can we? I find it useful to split AI in the contact center into 3 pillars here, because they do quite different jobs and yet they're linked in some way. So talk through these. The first is automation, which, if you like, it does the work, chatbot, self-service, back office processing, things like that, removing the routine tasks that humans have to do, so your people are freed for the calls that they actually need to take. Great. And that can be used either front office or back office. The second here is agent assistance, or possibly augmentation, if you want to stick with the A's, and that helps the human agent, surfaces knowledge to the agent within the actual call itself, things like next best actions, always hard to say that, and it writes up the summary afterwards, which is, you know, can be hugely useful, especially if you have a really long post-call work to do. So that lives inside the call itself in real time. And the third bit here, and what we're talking about mainly today, is analytics. That understands why all this is happening, why you're getting these calls in the first place. It listens to every interaction, learns from all of them, at a scale that no quality team can possibly do by manually, and it sits across every interaction. Now, all 3 of these pillars of AI, if you like, matter, and all 3 are in their place. You know, they are changing the world of the contact center as we speak. Automation is the one that all the noise was about a few years ago. And AI agent assistance is certainly having its time in the sun right now. But if I have said this before, if I had to pick one that I think will change the game over the longer term for the entire organization, not just the contact center, it's analytics. And that's what we're going to look at a bit more now.
The interesting thing there, just to interject, Steve, just an interesting anecdote actually from an insurance contact center I spoke to. It was some time ago now, probably about 6 months ago, but they implemented both automation and AI assistance. And the driver behind that, or the outcome that was expected from that, was what you would expect to get, i.e., reduced handle time, first call resolution, higher first call resolution, and improved agent attrition. They had high agent attrition, and so certainly the AI assistant, they felt would help with all of those areas. But what they actually found, but only some way down the line, having implemented that, was that all of this external or additional external noise coming into an agent from an AI assistant trying to help, but actually just creating further noise in an agent's head, was actually having the opposite effect. And unfortunately for them, it took the time for that to filter through to actually having the reverse effect of what was intended, in terms of agent attrition. Especially, they had people saying, I just can't work in this sort of environment, it's too much. And actually, if they had had some way of analyzing those calls almost in real time to hear what was going on, they could have nipped that problem in the bud a lot sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, agent assistance can be great. I think it's best implemented for in moderation. All things in moderation anyway. But there is a temptation to dial it right up and let's do absolutely everything with it. So for a very new agent, yes, that's possibly a good idea, a better idea. But for more experienced agents, and especially if you overdo it, yeah, I can see how that would happen. And yeah, understanding what's happening is the important bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's have a bit more look at the analytics as a foundation here. So it comes down to how these 3 pillars actually fit together. So as we said, automation and assistance can be hugely valuable. Yeah, let's say that, absolutely. And importantly, they give you a kind of fixed gain right from day one. You switch it on and it works. You can see it almost instantly. Automation acts on the rules that it's given. Assistance guides the agent in the moment, and can cut call lengths considerably if used responsibly. Both do what you configured them to do. Now, analytics behaves differently in one kind of crucial respect here, because it reads what's really happening across all of your interactions. Because it's constantly learning from real live data, it gets better and sharper every day. A bonus, what analytics learns, which is what kind of Greg talked about here, is like it feeds straight back into the other two. Like which rules your automation's getting wrong, which things are working, which things aren't working, the missing guidance that your agents need that you can provide, or maybe are you overdoing it with them? And you can't improve what you can't see. So with analytics, you're not looking at guesswork. You're looking at kind of real data here. And really, if you're getting your analytics right, the other two pillars are going to be getting better too. So.
Yeah, I think the only thing to add to that, Steve, is AI Agent Assist is obviously about improving the effectiveness of a real agent in real time by providing them with AI assistance. But what you can do with analyzing what has happened in the past is also improve an agent's ability to interact with the customer based on learning from what is actually being said by perhaps some of your top performers in terms of the strategies and tactics that they employ to deal with tricky customers or deal with complex issues, rather than providing an AI assistant in real time to try and help an agent to do that. But combined, you're getting the full solution, I guess.
Let's give you a concrete example of something that analytics can see that the headline number can't. This chart shows what's happened to call length in insurance over the past 15 years, and we're going a long time. Trend is clearly upwards. The orange line there is the contact center industry as a whole. The blue is the insurance sector. So you see, insurance calls have always been long, pretty much always been long. So in end of 2025, which is our latest data, average insurance call ran to 523 seconds against an all industry average of 438. So that's well over a minute longer than the typical UK call. And you can see there that the gap's been widening again. So one important question, because obviously, time is money. Important question is, where's that extra time going? What's it being spent on? Can we do anything about it? Most of the waste is kind of hidden, though. It's hidden within the call. So it's things like agents hunting across different systems, customers repeating themselves, manual typing in entries, unnecessary post-call wrap-up. I mean, that doesn't feature in call duration so much here, but that is a big thing. And so, and even kind of pre-call. So, for example, identity and verification checks on their own take an average of almost a minute across. That's pretty much 11% of the whole call. So, what before the customers even explain why they're ringing. So, what is it within the call, pre-call, post-call, during the call, can we cut without damaging customer experience? And that's exactly the point about analytics. This average call length here is telling you that potentially you may think you've got a problem. You've certainly got a cost. But it can't tell you where that problem is or what you can do about it. So if you can go within the call, analytics can show you precisely where those seconds are being lost and where the kind of savings potentially live.
There's another angle to that, Steve, which is, obviously any call center operator is going to want to try and keep calls, as short as possible because time is money. But without really analyzing each and every call, you can't find a correlation perhaps between call length and conversion rate. And what I mean by that is you might find when you analyze each and every call that longer calls convert better. Or conversely, it might just be a sign of struggling agents who are struggling to close a sale. But without that deep analysis of what's being said by both the agent and the client on each and every call, you're not going to get that level of detail.
That makes sense. So, hopefully we're making the case that analytics is valuable. This is quite an interesting slide. If it was that good, everybody would be doing it already. Well, in fact, it's not, or rather, they aren't. So this kind of slide shows why that assumption doesn't hold, because the call recorded there, this is the insurance sector. All the people that we interviewed, surveyed in the insurance sector, looking at what the use of technology was, they all say, yes, we record our calls, of course. So there we are. They're all sitting there nicely. However, it was only 49% of the people we talked to we analysing those calls. So that's a big gap. And it's also a risk. So, obviously we, have compliance and proof of compliance and things like that. And we have lots more regulations coming in all the time saying, are you sure you've done that? Can you prove you've done that? So you got things like, you might be missing a missed disclosure, for a vulnerable customer, perhaps your flagged phrase that you're looking for that, it goes unheard. The agent doesn't notice. It's nothing being flagged there. An agent might be struggling under pressure. And those are all risks. There's also the factor here, like, this is a competitive industry. There's lots of cross-selling and upselling opportunities. And if they're going begging and nobody realizes that, then that's also quite a big issue for you too, quite apart from the kind of the compliance side of things and the regulatory side of things. The insurance industry does know this though. It looks like insurers say that they're planning to take that 49% up to 82% by 2029, so the gap's starting to close. And so for insurers, the recordings that already exist in an archive, they're just gathering dust in many cases. So analytics will be the thing that finally turns that archive into an actual, real, and actionable business asset. So, I think positive news there. I'll have a look at. I want to come back to voice, because there is a temptation to think, oh well, everything's going digital and AI, and we don't need to worry too much about voice. I've already said before, 74% of the insurance sector work is voice, which is pretty much the highest of any sector. Not sure that's going to change massively anyway. When a query is high in complexity or urgency, in particular, a lot of insurance calls fall into that. Customer preference for telephony is actually increasing. You can see that in the pandemic times, a lot of crazy things happened, and people said there's a rush to the phone. We want reassurance. This is what we want to do. This is important. So the easy stuff moves to digital. Fair enough. What's left on the phone is the hardest and most important conversations that you have, the stuff where business is won and lost. Now, this matters enormously for retention. And we looked at this by age as well. So younger customers churn the fastest by some distance. You can see there 37% of the youngest said they left an insurer over poor customer experience, against 15% on average. And when you ask that group what they value the most, they say a polite and friendly agent and having their problem solved first time. So things like tone, frustration, repetition are exactly the things that don't show up in a quarterly customer survey. And by the time that survey goes out, the customers might well have voted with their feet and gone elsewhere. So voice is where these particular signals live, and analytics really is the only practical way to kind of view this at scale and hear them across every call and do something about them before it's too late. So I'll widen this out from the contact center to the business as a whole, because insurance has a particular commercial problem. To most customers, products look pretty much the same. One policy is much the same as another. So it means the conversation your customer has with your agent is often when you win or lose their business. Our research bears this out. We asked the contact centers across every sector to say various things that are really important to them, and then we kind of ranked them, looking at cross by sector, so we can see what's most important to each sector. And the ability to kind of to really kind of compete, to understand competition better, and to meet that competition head on. Obviously important for most sectors, but insurance really put that very, very high compared to the average business, the average contact center. So insurers already understand conversation is the battleground. That's something you can do something about. Now the opportunity you have is that every one of your calls is carrying competitive intelligence. Customers are naming your competitors, they're talking about prices, they're making direct product comparisons, and analytics captures all of that across each call and understands it, puts it into output that you can understand, that is actionable, and you can feed it straight to your product and marketing team. So it's informing the business instead of just kind of vanishing the moment the agent puts the call down, puts the phone down. So really, your customer's already telling you what you think, but as we saw in the previous slide, most insurers aren't actually acting upon it. And interesting, it's not on this slide, but it just occurred to me, because we have a question that says, right, of all these uses of analytics, what do you find most useful? So things like compliance, QA, and things like that, they always do really well. The one that really stands out to me that is lower, much lower than everything else, is competitive intelligence. That's not just in the insurance industry, it's across everywhere. And that's something every year we ask that question. Every year I look at it, I'm like, surely somebody must be doing something with this. That's a real opportunity, competitive intelligence, because most organizations aren't doing on it. So you do something, even if it's relatively simple, I think you're going to put yourself ahead of most of your competitors, or certainly most of the industry as a whole. Just thought I'd mention that. So final slide from me. Bring everything together with kind of 3 short phrases that might be familiar, because this is something that you might be hearing every day. First is, I've already called about this. On its own, that's a moment of wasted time for the customer. First contact resolution's broken, which is something that's absolutely critical to customer experience. They say this all the time. Customers losing patience. If you hear that once, it might cost you a call. If you hear it across thousands of calls, it's telling you something is badly wrong inside one of your processes, but you won't know that unless you've analyzed it. Second is, no one's mentioned that before. That one's kind of a compliance risk. That's obviously, I don't need to tell the people on this call about compliance how important it is. So it's an issue you didn't see coming, and that can prove expensive in many different ways. And the third thing there is, I'll look at other options, and that's a kind of renewal walking out the door, going somewhere else, doesn't want to go head to head and say, I'm definitely leaving you, but that's not a good sign. So if you're missing these ones, as I said, each of them costs you a single call, and maybe you might notice a customer here and there going, but if you're missing them at scale, they start to cost you a lot of business. And the crucial point is that you already have this information. 100% call recordings, you already have this. And analytics really is simply how you finally get to hear them. So with that, I will hand over to Greg. He's going to show you a bit more about what this looks like in practice.
Thank you, Steve. So yeah, what I've heard from you over the last sort of 20 minutes or so is that, well, one of the main things that I took out of all of what you said is that clearly pretty much every insurance company that is engaged in selling insurance, either B2B or B2C, is recording their calls, but only half of them are actually doing anything with that data. And that data is incredibly valuable. It's incredibly rich in information. And 50% of companies are throwing that data away because they're not doing anything with it. And you won't be surprised to hear that Tollring have a solution that enables businesses to make use of that data. We are able to help you to take that unstructured data, which is all of these conversations that you're recording, and pull the value from those conversations. So the simple way of describing what our product does is it lets you use natural language to ask questions about what's going on in your business. And this has use cases across all parts of an insurance business, whether it's revenue, whether it's compliance, whether it's customer experience, whether it's agent training, product development, multiple different use cases across all of those departments. So to think of some of the use cases, if we're thinking about people who are in revenue and they're worried about growing revenues, and ultimately, what drives that is conversion rates. They might ask questions using natural language, such as where in the call does price objection typically arise, and how often are agents successfully able to reframe that in terms of value versus just discounting. And once you've understood that, you can ask questions like, okay, so which of my agents are best at doing that? And actually, of those, what techniques are they using? And then once you've gathered all that information, you then use that, coming back to my earlier point about using this analytics to improve your agent performance. You close that loop and you use the intelligence that you've got from what's going on in your business to help that agent improvement. If you're in compliance, you might be worried about compliance and contact risk. Something you might want to know is, on renewal calls with existing customers, are my agents clearly explaining price changes in a way that satisfies consumer duty, fair value expectations? And that is something that matters a lot under the FCA general insurance pricing practice rules, because you can't price walk existing customers. And using all of your call recordings, you can simply ask the question, are we satisfying that duty to our customers? If you're in customer experience, you might want to ask questions like what the sentiment trend is across claims call, and where does it drop? Is it at that notification of loss? Is it when the settlement offer happens? Is it when there are delays? Where is the sentiment changing from a happy customer to an unhappy customer? Or simple things like the most common reasons that customers are unhappy with claims outcomes, or the length of time it is to process claims. Simple, natural language, asking questions of that rich data that you have. You might want to know whether there are recurring service failures, repeated calls, coming back to one of your points, Steve, repeated calls for the same claim, poor handoff between departments, all of that sort of thing. If you're responsible for training of your agents, which of your agents and teams have got the best and worst conversion rates, retention rates, and complaint rates? And what specifically differs in their techniques? And how can we take that information and use it to improve our agent performance? If you're in product, you could look at things like root cause and trend spotting. So what topics are trending upward month on month across calls? It could be mentions of a specific weather event. It could be a claims backlog. It could be a pricing change that customers didn't understand or didn't expect. Lots of things in terms of trends that you can uncover across a broad time range. So lots of different use cases. Obviously, in terms of a note on governance, you've got to treat AI and the output that you get from AI as a triage and insight tool. Certainly, when there's things like disciplinary action, regulatory, or customer detriment consequences, you can't treat it as the final word. It's the triage and the insight. You need to obviously always have a human involved in that. So what you want to do is build in some human review before any AI flagged compliance issues lead to any formal actions. You want to be able to keep an audit trail of what was asked and what was returned of your AI tool, and you want to periodically spot check the AI's transcriptions to make sure that you're not getting things like false positives and negatives, because your regulators will want to see some oversight of that in case of investigations and that sort of thing. So hopefully that provides you with some insights into what we do. We offer a complete solution that enables you to do call recording as well. So if you actually need a product to record the call, we can do that for you. One of our key channels is Microsoft Teams. We are a Microsoft certified call recording provider. But if you have those call recordings already, you can apply our AI layers on top of that. So I think I'll leave it there, Steve. We're just about done. As a wrap up, the key takeaways I'd like to leave you with are, first of all, customer conversations remain the most valuable and underutilized source of insight available. The gap between what businesses think their customers are experiencing and what they're actually saying can be quite significant. And thirdly, that AI-powered analytics now makes it possible for you at scale to uncover those gaps and to get in real intelligence into what your customers are experiencing and saying. And the call to action is simple. Have a fresh look at the conversations that are already happening in your business. If you're already recording those calls, if you're not getting the value out of that data, have a think about that. think about ways that you could identify new opportunities across all different parts of your business. And obviously, we'd be delighted to talk to you in more detail. You've got my details on screen. Feel free to reach out. And as I mentioned, everyone who registered will get a copy of the slide deck and the recording. But without further ado, we're 1 minute over. Thank you for staying with us, those who did. Thanks for your time. And thank you, Steve. Until next time.